Yeah, it's been an interesting morning today. We went from basically a 3-person open clinic to 12 or more, I don't know. Yeah. So today we talk about trauma resolution. And in my clinic, we really focus on trauma. Okay, to me, trauma, we talk about channels, right? Channel have 4 modes, godlike or parasympathetic, where everything flows correctly and we are thriving, okay? It can be fight or flight, right? Where we basically living a lot of fear in life of not meeting expectation or trying to meet expectation, or there's a lot of internal triggers within us, so we are very fearful of what's around us, right? And it could be in pause and dissociation, right? Pause and dissociation is essentially we don't know whether we can live or not, okay? And I do have at least 2 patients earlier today that have these events, okay? So one was hit when she was riding a bicycle. Another person, she was basically having open stomach and open chest surgeries, right? All these are life-threatening events. Some people go through, just abuse or violence or something like that, right? So what is trauma exactly, right? To me, it took me a lot of time to really break it down into the essence of trauma, right? People go through different things. Why do they experience different experiences? Why are their channels running differently, right? For example, in Holocaust, Nazi concentration camps, 99.99% of the people suffers. But there are a few that they somehow maintain who they are, right? And they come out of the such events and really thrive and really leave the world to be a better place, right? What's going on? Why do we suffer, right? So to me, the definition of trauma really is because of certain events that change our perspective, change our physical issues, right? Change our emotional makeup, change how we see the world. We may no longer feel the world is safe anymore, right? And that affects our channels, right? And then get us into fight and flight, right? For example, my parents did not protect me against certain people, for example, right? Then all of a sudden my world is not safe. I'm no longer under the feeling or the sense that I'm well protected. My parents are my shield to whatever, right? Or all of a sudden I feel like there's no unconditional love anymore, right? My parents love me when I do my homework well, when I play piano well. Otherwise, I don't feel they love me, right? So to me, all these can affect us physically, emotionally, prospectively, and how we connect to the world. As a result, our channels change, and to me, that's my definition of trauma. Okay, trauma is not events. It's not based on what happened to us. Is what's remaining within us, right? And when we change, to me, when I have that perspective, when I look at people who come to me with so-called trauma, all I see is a chance to transform. Honestly, that's all I see, right? We talk about sympathy, empathy, and compassion. I'm relatively sympathy-free, right? And in my clinic, we really, really stress that, right? Because when we sympathize with somebody, we take power away from that person. And the way to do this is not to say, oh, I'm not going to sympathize. No, you can't do that, right? The way to do this is to see everybody as, having a heart of gold. And all the trauma is to provide a chance to transform. When we have pain, and all that suppressed stuff, right? We seek, right? And it's through seeking and through, just relentless seeking that we find out, then we will find a way to get back to our heart, right? So to me, that's what trauma means to me, okay? So think about it, right? Trauma, is it because, certain people go through certain things, that's why they have trauma? Or certain things install something within us that cause us to think, behave, feel, see the world differently, right? And get our channels, for example, we become fight and flight oriented. Our gallbladder channel and our UB channels are so up in our head. We're hypervigilant all the time. It's like, okay, there's something's going to happen to us. We don't know when and we don't know where, right? And guess what? We're going to have digestion issue. We're going to have, dampness. We're going to have liver qi stagnation. Our sleep's going to suffer, right? Our posture's going to change, right? It changes everything. Our muscle is going to be tight. Why? Because it's not safe, right? Then we go to the doctor and say, well, doctor, I have digestion problem. No, we don't have digestion problem. So in my clinic, I rarely treat symptoms. I honestly, people can tell me all kinds of symptoms they want, but what I'm looking for is, how's your life? How do you live? To me, that's important, right? And if that's my trauma definition, right? And from that, right? So a lot of things start to fit, right? So abused childhood, right? Illness, cancer, for example, chronic pain, right? Cosmetic surgery, which I really want to talk about at some point. Relationship with our parents, with our loved ones, with our siblings, with our teachers, with everybody, with our work, work, when we go to work and, everything, right? Every relationship, right? Accidents, people riding bikes and all of a sudden they were hit, right? Suffer concussion, for example, right? And after that, their whole life basically crumbles. They never feel safe. Their friend circles start to crumble, right? They start to distance themselves from everybody else. They start to feel very isolated, right? And everything else, right? Why? Because they got into the pause mode, right? They got into dissociation, right? Birth can be a tremendous traumatic event for a lot of people because the way, we don't, to me, I never had, at least in this lifetime, I didn't have the chance to give birth. But imagine the way, like when I actually have 4 kids, so I actually witnessed 4 births, right? Oxytocin, is it no, not oxytocin, Pitocin, right? So Pitocin was given and all these things were given, right, to force contraction, right, before the person is ready, right, before the mom is ready to deliver. And on the table, the posture, the positioning is really, really awkward. All people, after birth, they suffer pelvic issues, right, and other issues, right. If there's a C-section, right, all of a sudden the natural production or the natural release of oxytocin when the baby comes out, right, is disrupted, and all of a sudden a person go back to highly, fight and flight, sympathetic state, right, and that causes a whole lot of emotional issues down the road, right, because oxytocin was not released. And death, of course, can cause a lot of trauma, right? People who, the dad passed away or mom passed away, a spouse passed away, children passed away, or we're going to die, right? All these things can get us to get us basically get our channels to get stuck, right? We feel the whole world is turning off. We're not running, the Rin channel and the Du channels are not running properly anymore, right? So when our midbrain is not energized, we do not feel hope, right? We are not curious, right? We can't love, basically, right? Suppression is a huge thing in the society, okay? To me, it's almost like everybody who has gone through 12 years of school have some kind of a trauma. And to me, trauma doesn't mean that people are actively hurting other people. It's just the sense that we have to suppress ourselves. Again, trauma, in my definition, is a chronic misalignment of our channels. Okay, it's just that simple. Okay, it's not because certain events, right? But let's say we go through school. From kindergarten, my daughter. The first day she went to school, she was so happy going to school, right? When she came home, she was so angry, and I asked her why. It's like, I was drawing, and the teacher said I have to go read, right? And then she was so mad, right? But then she learned she has to suppress what she wants or what she is passionate about, what she's, it's ongoing in her mind, right? She has to switch, and when she switches, she's still in the drawing mode, but now she has to read, right? So we learn to suppress what we feel like we're doing, right? Of course, life is not all about feeding us, but when we constantly in that environment where we're told what to do, our schedule is determined, what we learn is determined, and everything else is determined. When we don't have that sense of choice, right, then we feel suppressed. Then we're depressed. Then our liver has to get stagnated, right? Our pericardial channel has to get locked up, right? Is there any surprise that people want to kill themselves, right? Because lots of times killing oneself is to people who kill themselves, killing oneself is the only choice they have left. We're in Silicon Valley, right? A few years back, I think it's in Palo Alto, there's quite a few kids, right? I mean, that's the most, prestigious school, right? Good students, they stay in front of the train and kill themselves. At that time, I actually felt like, oh my goodness, they really make a choice, right? They really make a choice to show, what will push a person into that state, right? How stuck do they have to be to do something like that? And to me, it's not an easy thing to do for sure, right? And some people cut themselves, right? Cutting is actually another thing to deal with, frustration, suppression, because when we cut ourselves, we get into a dissociation. We get out of our body, okay? That's a natural thing for our body to do, is when we feel a cut or perforation of the skin, okay? When a mouse is caught by a cat, and the cat goes in, right? The mouse will actually go into pause and dissociation. Right? And that's a very natural reaction to get. So when we get out of our body, when we go into pause and dissociation, we get out of where we are. We stop. It's like I don't care what's happening around me. I'm in a different state. Okay. And some people actually, over time, learn to use that mode. They consistently stay in pause and dissociation, as if that's the way they live through life. Because then nothing affects them, right? They feel a huge distance or a plastic glass. It's like I am here, but I'm not really here because in between us there's a glass. There's a solid glass, as if we're going to Wells Fargo to get money, and there's like everybody's behind these things. You can see them, but you can't touch them, right? Pause and dissociation get us to be somewhat like that, okay? And violence, of course, can cause, can completely, all of a sudden, change us physically, emotionally, prospectively, and connection-wise, because life is not safe anymore. We're walking on the street, we're sleeping at home, all of a sudden something happened to us, right? And we cannot get help, or we want to get help, but we're so fearful of getting help, right? And injustice, right? Like social justice and, people with different race, gender, sexuality, and all these can cause tremendous amount of sense that, get our channel to feel differently, right? Like we don't feel safe anymore, right? So when these events happen, right, and it change ourselves, again, our channels are there to change. On a moment-by-moment basis, depending on what we encounter, right? So let's say during trauma, right? Let's say I'm a mouse, right, and I get caught by a cat, and I go into pause and dissociation. That's exactly what I'm supposed to do when I get caught by a cat. Okay, that's exactly what I'm supposed to do to preserve my life as long as possible, right? But when the cat is not around, and I'm actually well enough to get back to life, and I'm not coming out of pause and dissociation, then I get stuck in that pause and dissociation mode. Okay, animals don't really do that. Okay, when the mouse detects that the cat is not around, right, it will actually shake the whole entire body, right? Get all the channels. When the mouse gets caught, all the channels goes into the do channel. That's why do channel is called the reservoir of all channels. Okay, it's for the pause mode, right? So So then it will actually redistribute all the channels back into where they're supposed to be and then wander off, right? So animals do not get into these stuck channel modes. That's why, can you imagine like a gazelle in Africa being chased by a lion and it's always like this, right? No, animals do not do that, right? They get into a certain channel modes, then they get out, right? Then they get back to their normal modes, right? We as humans are far more intelligent, but at the same time, we hold on to things, right? And it's those holding on to things that's getting us, get us to suffer, okay? I have people, I honestly have a lady, 75, she was raped by her own dad, okay? She still suffers, right? And her husband, her whole family, basically. When she suffers, her whole family, entire family suffers as well, right? Because life is not safe, right? When you don't feel safe and you project that energy around you, right? So when she saw me and I said, well, you gotta, so what we do in the clinic, right? The way in my clinic, the way we resolve, trauma is to say, okay, I understand why people will get into these modes, but then the goal is to get back into, actually, to me, through trauma, the so-called trauma, we can actually get to a sort of like an enlightened state, okay, that we connect to loving kindness all the time. We know we have a heart of gold. We know everyone have a heart of gold, right? And we know we have purpose. We may not know what our purposes are. We don't need to know. It's just I have a purpose, okay? To me, this is really as I was progressing through my years of progression, I guess, right? One thing that really, really give me a lot of power is I have a purpose. Everything that ever happened to me has a purpose. My neck, I have a motorcycle accident when I was 17. My neck has a reverse curvature. I was hunched, I was in severe pain, headaches, and for a long, long time. My left hip is not quite right. I have sciatica for a number of years, right? All these right now to me is extremely purposeful. There's a good reason why I got that. Today in my clinic, I'm so keen. I'm so in tune with people's posture. Why? Because I had bad posture before, and I worked through that, right? I understand. I get into my body, and I start to learn from these things. Was I resentful of my injuries and stuff like that for years? Absolutely, right? So, a lot of our life's gifts are wrapped up in shiny papers. Okay, they're given to us like, oh, happy birthday or happy this and this, right? To me, there's a lot of gifts that are wrapped around in barbed wires, okay? We don't want them. They're very painful. They're nasty. They look ugly, right? We want to throw them away. They just keep coming back until one day, right? We take our time, carefully unwrap this gift. Then we see, oh my goodness, that's exactly what I need, okay, to get to where I want to be, okay? Trauma gets us to seek, right? And it's through seeking that we find what we're looking for. So to me, if we can get back to a state of connecting to a loving kindness, knowing that everyone has a heart of gold, including myself, so then all of a sudden I have no trauma. I felt I was hurt. I felt I was broken, right? But am I truly broken? If I still have a heart of gold, am I truly broken, right? And everything has a purpose, right? And I have a choice. When we have a choice, we have power. When we have a choice, when we can connect, okay, so that lady, I asked her to say, okay, can you connect to loving kindness and connect to your dad's heart of gold and love your dad unconditionally? She looked at me and she almost punched me. It's like, what do you want me to do? Did you know what he did to me? I said, yes. More than 50 years ago. And you're still suffering. Your dad is dead, okay? And you're still suffering. Do you want to heal? Do you want to transform? Do you want to be healed, right? You know, when I ask her those questions, honestly, I look at the husband, I look at her husband, very, very loving man, okay? He almost just kneeled down in front of his wife and say, honey, can you please just try it? Okay? Because he knows deep down she was suffering, right? And when she suffers, everyone around her is suffering. She actually stormed out of my clinic that day. Okay? 2 weeks later, she came back and looked at me in the eyes and said, John, I am ready. I'm going to give this stupid thing a shot. Okay? And she lay on the table. She struggled connecting to her dad. Right? She struggled, but eventually she did. And she did connect to her dad's heart of gold. And for 60 seconds, okay, for one complete minute. That's why in my clinic I actually have this clock with a second hand, okay, so I can see 60 seconds. For 1 minute, I get her to connect to her dad, and word by word, from her heart, okay, very, very difficult. It has to come from her heart, through her chest, through her throat, for her to verbalize, I love you, Dad. I love you unconditionally. It was so difficult for her. You know, these words were struggle coming out of her heart, but eventually she did it for 1 minute, okay? And she was never the same, okay? When we do this, are we doing this? To me, you know, a lot of times people ask me, why do I want to do this for this animal, right? Why would I want to do this for this person? To love is not to love another person unconditionally has nothing to do with that person. It's all for ourselves. Loving unconditionally is the most selfish thing we can do, but at the same time, it's the most unselfish thing we can do ever. Okay, give this a try. Okay, so in my clinic, you know, I see people who have basically at the end of their road. Okay, their life is just full of suffering. Right, they're hypervigilant. They don't feel safe, and they, you know, it's like everything they try so hard to maintain and control and manage. All of a sudden, they feel things are going to crumble. Right. Their life is going to crumble. Everything, you know, they try so hard is going to crumble, right? Because when we are in fear, we try to control things. But when we start to love, we start to learn to surrender, we start to learn to, you know, accept, we start to be who we are, okay? We start to do not the right thing, but what's most empowering at the moment, okay? We start to have true power, okay? Then we transform, right? And to me, that's true healing. Okay, so in my clinic, you know, when I see trauma, I smile. I literally have an inner smile. Okay, people are in pain in front of me. People want to commit suicide in front of me. I honestly have an inner smile because you're at a place where you can transform. Okay, so honestly, in my clinic, all I do is to say, okay, can you give it a shot? There's loving kindness. Would you connect to it? Okay. Can you take, you know, 1 second, 1 minute, or 1 day, or 1 week to just try it out? Like everyone has a heart of gold. The person commit the most heinous crime has a heart of gold. Can we try it for 1 week? Right? Can I accept that everything ever happened to me has a purpose? Can I accept I have a purpose? I may be the smallest blade of grass in the giant, you know, sequoia redwood forest, but I have a purpose. With that sense, I have this courage to say I am going to thrive. I am not going to, you know, judge myself based on, you know, what I've been through, you know, the mistakes I've been made, right? The people I've hurt, you know, I'm not going to do that. Right at this moment, I have a purpose. I have all these experiences, but I am going to thrive right now. And I'm going to choose to love unconditionally. Honestly, every one of us have basically 5 people in our life that truly, truly affect us. At most 10. For most people that I see, you know, 5 people. Our mom, our dad, maybe a few more people. Okay? And that's it. These are the 5 people that affect us every day, over and over and over and over again. You know, our life has a script because of these 5 people put stuff within us, okay, or cause stuff to be installed within us to protect ourselves, okay. If we can love unconditionally, these 5 people's heart of gold, okay. In my clinic, that's how people transform. That's how people change. Because all of a sudden, when we can love, what does that mean? That means we activate our heart. Okay, our biggest trouble is we don't trust enough. We feel we lock our heart up. We can't love anymore. And it's very obvious, okay? People's shoulders start to come in because we need to protect ourselves. And when we do that, we have liver qi stagnation. Our lung channel is not flowing anymore. We start to build up our dampness, right? We start to have all these troubles, okay? So again, again, of course, this is very high level, right? But that's the direction we're going, okay? On the opposite side, okay, that's how, there's about 15 minutes, okay? I'm just going to go through this real quickly. On the opposite side, that's how trauma, okay, or events, okay, that how triggers or, when we say we are traumatized, right, to me is we have triggers within us that cause us to live or see things certain ways. Okay, for example, life is not safe. We cannot trust certain people. Okay, and why? How? Right? So this is a very simple model that I use. Okay, so essentially we have 3 brains. Okay, it's very interesting. Okay, so when I first learned this, it's like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Okay, so we have the reptilian brain, okay, which is the most primitive brain, which all reptiles have, right? Then we have the limbic brain, but it's not the reptilian brain somehow evolved into a limbic brain, into somehow it takes more functions and stuff like that. No, it's the reptilian brain, and then there's a limbic brain, and then there's a frontal cortex. It's like there's a head, and there's a helmet, and there's another helmet, right? So if humans keep evolving, so maybe we have another helmet, and another helmet, and another helmet, right? Very, very interesting. And different, and these brain actually maintain their original function, right? So the reptilian brain maintain our reflex, right? So if my, somebody something fly into my eyes and it touches my eyelashes, I'm going to blink. Okay, I'm going to close my eyes, right? And similarly, right, we have a lot of reflex built in, right? And those are actually handled by reptilian brain. Why? Because they're the fastest. Okay, you cannot say, okay, a fly or something is touching my eyelashes, and I think this is a stone or this is whatever, and I determine to close my eyes. Okay, my eyes will be blind at that time. Okay, so from the time we receive the stimulus, right, to the time it goes through limbic brain, which generate emotions based on our triggers, right? And then it goes through our frontal cortex, which knows what's going on, right? So let's say I'm driving, and the next car comes in, and I automatically do this, and I come back to the center and maintain, rebuild my boundary, and then I know I'm almost hit by this idiot, right? That's 0.8 seconds later, okay? If we don't have these reflex and this limbic brain, right, that cause us to move, emotion is enable motion. So our anger and our fear are always active, okay, to protect our boundary, right? If we rely on the frontal cortex, which is the thinking brain, which is the conscious brain, to process everything, we have accidents all the time, okay? So the triggers, right? When we don't play our piano well, and we get beat, right? And we install these triggers within us. It's like, okay, if I don't do things well, something's going to happen to me. Okay, so all of a sudden, if I'm not perfect, right, I will get yelled at. Okay, if I'm not perfect, I am in danger. Okay, let's say if that trigger is installed us, and all of a sudden our whole life is like this, right? We go to work, we're like this, right? We have to be perfect, right? We have to think, right? And, you go, can you give me a cup of coffee? I have to come up with 12 scenarios to get a coffee. What if I, go this way and I spill the coffee? What if the coffee is not good? You want sugar or cream or da. You start to, you have to get this coffee perfectly. But all this person wants is a cup in his hand or her hand, and it's filled with some kind of a liquid that's dark. And that's it. But we have to make it perfect. Because within us, there's a trigger cause, if I'm not perfect, I'm in danger. One of my first patients doing emotional work, okay, she has panic attack, okay, in two situations. Okay, one is when she gets stuck in Highway 17. Okay, that kind of makes sense, right? You get all of a sudden you're stuck in this traffic time, right, and you have nowhere to go, and it makes sense, right? You get panic attack, right? The other situation totally blows my mind, and I was like, why? When she and her husband is driving, she's in the driver's seat, and they're in Arizona, right? And they're driving this highway that's completely straight, and there's absolutely no car. She will get a panic attack. She has to say, stop the car, and she will get out of the car and just vomit, on the side of the freeway, right? She will get her genuine panic attack at that time too. And when we're looking at this, it's like, okay, what are these two situations in common? What's in common is she has nothing to do, which is very interesting. So then she's like, oh my goodness, I remember this, okay? When she was little, when she has nothing to do and she's laying on the sofa, right, laying on the couch, right, it's like, oh, life is good. I'm just going to take a breather. Her parents will actually come over and whack her in the head. Go do something. And that's her triggers. So when she has nothing to do, that thing gets triggered. And she gets panic. Interesting, right? Very, very interesting. So emotions, right? All these panic attack or something like this, or jealousy or shame or, behaviors or whatever, right? In my clinic is really, we honor that. We embrace that, right? When we say loving kindness, we don't just say, oh, we're loving kindness to other people. No, we're loving kindness to everything we have, okay? Including our emotions, including our pain, right? Including our posture right now, including everything, right? Then we have a chance to have clarity or to have a sense of what's beyond, what's generate these emotions. What are the triggers behind these emotions that continue to get triggered to generate these emotions? When we try to manage our emotions, right? When we try to suppress these emotions, this fear or anger or something like that, that's when we get in trouble. The more we manage or control, the more emotionally intelligent we are, the more we hide or block or not, basically say, okay, I don't want these emotions, then we never have the chance to sense and feel, the triggers behind these emotions. The limbic brain and the reptilian brain are in our subconscious. We have no way of knowing consciously. The only way we will know, right, to have an idea is through the behaviors, our emotions or our rigidities or something like that. Then we know there's something that's within ourselves that needs to get resolved, right? So that's really, now all of a sudden, right, trauma resolution in the clinic becomes very, very, how do you say this? Very, very contiguous, right? We're not like, okay, you do this, then you have one way to resolve that, and you have this problem, and then you do this. No, we don't, right? Everything goes back to very simple, right? Loving kindness, right? Purpose, heart of goal, and choice. These four simple things, okay? From these four simple things, we start to develop a whole lot of techniques, okay? These techniques are not protocol-driven, but situation-driven, okay? For example, we have one technique, what we call hold with loving kindness. Okay, people come in, we don't do anything, we just hold. Okay, people who are in fight and flight or pause or dissociation, you hold them, you try to support their hands, you move your hand, their hand is still there. They're trying to predict every step you do. They're trying to figure out what you're trying to do. Okay? They cannot help it because they're hypervigilant. Okay? They do not feel safe. Their body does not trust. Right? So just by a hold, okay, doing absolutely nothing for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour if necessary, right? Give this person who doesn't trust in the body tremendous amount of stimulus to say, oh, I think it's fine. This person is not going to hurt me. Okay? Our triggers are universal and global. Okay? When we say, I don't trust anybody, it's nobody we can trust. If we don't trust our parents, if we feel like our parents give us conditional love and I cannot trust my parents 100%, we don't trust anybody. So our triggers are universal. It applies to everything we do. Okay? So if we can hold a person for minutes and tens of minutes and everything like that, right? And the person all of a sudden goes like, you know what? I feel safe with this person. So all of a sudden, that trigger is not 100% anymore. So what we're doing is we're not defeating everything this person has. We're trying to make a little hole. So this is where acupuncture, okay, that's how we treat scars, okay, is we poke this tiniest hole, right? So this trigger is like this bulletproof thing, right? As long as there's one hole, this whole thing just doesn't exist anymore. If we can trust one person in the world, that means the world is not unsafe. You know, what I believe was just my belief. That is not real anymore. Okay? So this is very interesting. Okay, so it may look like, okay, this person has been traumatized for decades or even 50 years or something like that, right? Can we still change it? Can this person still be changed? Absolutely. Right? Because as long as we can say, okay, when this person believes that 100% for sure that nobody can be trusted, we can find one exception. And all of a sudden, this belief is not true anymore. This belief loses its power. Right? And that thriving energy can come back. Our Ren channel and our Du channel can come back. Our liver chi can go through the lung again. Right? We can breathe again. And then when a person feels like this, you know, after decades or, you know, of not be able to breathe, they were able to breathe, that sense of, you know, honestly, I have, triathletes, you know, when they, you know, switch their sympathetic or pause mode to parasympathetic and they're breathing, they were going like, oh my goodness, I can breathe like this. These are triathletes, okay? Marathon runners, okay? They can perform, you know, but they rarely breathe like that because they don't feel safe, okay? So a lot of these other techniques like sympathy-free compassion max, you know, it's because we don't, you know, in our clinic we don't sympathize. Why? Because we all have a heart of gold. You cannot damage these heart of gold, okay? You may feel you're traumatized, you're broken, but you're not. Okay, would you make that choice? Would you try it? Okay, people who try it, actually, you know, they change, right, instantaneously. And we treat scars, stuff like that. One thing I really want to talk about is we honor our anger in our clinic. We honor our anger, okay? It doesn't mean we get angry, okay? Anger is behind thriving. Anger is behind courage. Anger is behind, you know, we do what we do, to express ourselves, right? Anger is behind our Ren channel and our Du channel. Anger is how we protect our boundaries, how we can have a good boundary. When all of us honor our boundary, honor our anger, honestly, the world is very, very safe. It's when we try to suppress our boundary, try to say, oh, okay, I'm a nice person, so I'm not going to say this, you know, I'm going to feel this way, but I'm not going to express this. That's when we get in trouble, right? When anger and fear are not balanced, when anger is not there to protect us, fear has to elevate. Okay? I have a person ask me, it's like, I have so much fear, what do I do? I say, don't work on your fear, work on your anger. Okay? And we have a lot of stupid ways to to get our anger to come out. Okay, yelling is a really good thing. Okay, yelling in the car. Okay, but what we yell is important. Okay, if we yell, "I have a purpose," versus "the world is not fair," okay, that's completely different. Okay, I have a purpose. I have a choice. Okay, add some nasty words in between. I have a ta-ta-ta purpose or something like that. Please do. Okay, get your anger out. Get yourself, the anger that's trying to protect us out. Okay, when we try to suppress it for years and decades, right? When we have secrets that we cannot tell, right? The anger goes so deep, right? All we have is fear, right? Then life is really, really difficult, right? Yeah. And we do have techniques to resolve pause and dissociation. Okay, we actually have one patient this morning. But she's going to come back next week because I do need like 30 minutes of relatively quiet time with her. But she's going to come back. Okay, she was hit by a car when she was riding a bicycle. She's a college environment. Yeah. And we have ways to resolve triggers, right? That the triggers that's installed, right? And again, it's very simple. Okay, embrace our emotion. Get a pen and paper, write it down, describe everything we feel. Okay, really get in touch with our emotion, honor our emotion. Do not try to suppress it. Do not try to manage it. Do not try to do it. Do not try to just smile through the day, okay, as if nothing matters. Okay, it matters. Everyone's healing is critical. Okay, when one person heals, the world starts to heal. Okay, it's very, 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 very important. Okay. And we have ways to release reptilian brain commands. Okay, let me talk very quickly about that. I have like 2 more minutes. Okay, so reptilian brain, when they receive a stimulus, for example, we receive violence. Okay, then our reflex is to fight, to yell, to scream. Right, but let's say we somehow get suppressed. Okay, then these commands are not executed. Okay. These commands will always stay with the person. That's my experience, okay? And what you find is rigidity, okay? For example, a person, car accident, right? It hit something, right? It tried to, put the hands out, protect the head, right? But the hands were not up, right? And the head goes into the windshield, for example, right? The hands will never be right because the reptilian brain commands were issued to raise the hand, to protect the head. Okay, it did not finish it. Okay. Similarly, when a person is violently attacked, okay, either it's a violence or sexual violence, when that person cannot fend off, the attack or the violence, right, that stays with that person because the reptilian brain will continue to issue these commands. Okay, poke the eyes out, hit the throat, or yell, or scream, or something like that. When that is not done, these commands stay with that person. Okay, so in the clinic, what we're seeing is rigidity, right? This sense of fear. Okay, you startle this person will basically roll up into a ball. Okay. And things like that. Okay, and we do have reptilian brain command release is actually really, really simple. Okay, so all we gotta do is to connect to loving kindness. Okay, again, that's the key. Okay, the key is we need to be able to connect to loving kindness, and then ideally connect to that person's heart of gold, that person that caused us these issues, right? And just hit that person. Okay, when we do this, right? Initially, when the person is connecting, for example, my 75-year-old patient, when she connected to her dad, she couldn't even raise a finger. She couldn't do anything. Her whole body was frozen, right? So we just basically do a little, move a finger, move a finger, move a finger, move a wrist a little bit until she was able to push, right? Eventually hit, eventually scream, okay? Eventually yell, right? In my clinic, I have people who, yell out with such force that all my windows were shaking, okay? And to me, those are beautiful, okay? And then afterwards, connect to that person's heart of gold again. Because that person still has a heart of gold. That truly is our confirmation that we have a heart of gold, that we can never be broken. I make my choice, right? I choose to connect to your heart of gold. Why? Because I have one too. To me, that is true healing. Okay, so trauma to me, is it a problem? It is not a problem. It is an opportunity to transform. I hope this resonates with most of you, ideally all of you, right? Because honestly, I made a vow to serve healers, okay? And people who have traumas, when they heal themselves, they are true healers. Okay? Healers do not heal other people. Healers heal ourselves, okay? May we all heal. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, John. Anyone online that have any questions or anything to address to John? Unmute yourself if you have anything to, that you want to.
So let me just tie this up, okay? Let me tie it up to, cultivation, right? To understanding channels, to understanding liver qi stagnation, right? So in order to do trauma work, we need to be healers, okay? We need to begin to heal ourselves from within, right? And that to me is cultivation, right? We need to honor our anger, mindful of our body, right? And everything, right? So to me, then we're talking about mutual healing, okay? When we make a vow, when we determine to heal ourselves, right? And we have any opportunity to serve another soul, another person, to me it's mutual healing. Healing is never one-sided. It's never one person sacrificing his or her self physically or emotionally for the benefit of another person. To me, that's not healing. That's called wounded healers. Okay? People like that are wounded. Okay? They continue to feel they have to sacrifice themselves to serve the world. Initially, I felt like, oh my goodness, that was so noble, right? But then I thought, well, that's so cruel, right? I want to do that. I want my kids to do that. I want everybody to do that, right? If everybody who has the heart to serve another person will, end up wounded, physically and emotionally, that makes no sense, right? So a lot of the trauma resolution comes from my vow to serve, okay? Because I want to heal myself. I would love all my kids to heal. I would like all my friends, all my family, everybody in the world to heal, right? And so far, this is my understanding, yeah. Okay, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.